we're going to get started. So welcome to the College of Science. Thank you so much for joining us here in the Alumni Hall. And I'd like to welcome everyone joining us via live stream, particularly our colleagues from Roanoke, as well as the National Capital Region. So we're delighted to have President Sands and Provost Clark visiting our college today. Our format will be as follows. President Sands will make a few brief remarks, and then we'll open it up for questions. We'll have about 30 minutes here, and then we'll go into the Assembly Hall where there are sandwiches and drinks if you want an early lunch. And there you could engage with the presidents and provost in sort of one-on-one conversations. Please keep your questions brief and succinct so we can move through as many questions as possible. If you're joining us by live stream, there should be directions on the stream about how to, I think, email your questions in, and we'll share them with the group here. So thank you again so much for joining us today, President Sands.
Well, thank you, Dean Morton. I look forward to these kind of visits. This is a little different than we've done in the past. We've often made the circuit with the so-called dog and pony show and heard student presentations, faculty presentations, and I love that kind of thing because it informs me. It kind of gets me in depth in little corners of excellence in the college. But the reality is this time we thought that it would be much more practical and useful to have a Q&A kind of format. So rather than Provost Clark and we have Teresa Mayer, Vice President for Research and Innovation, just walked in. Rather than the three of us giving speeches and telling you what you already know, which is, and I'll make a few remarks to share some of that, we really want to reserve the time for your questions and our responses, and so we can learn something about where we are and where we need to go, where the pinch points are, what your aspirations are, what you worry about, what keeps you up at night, which is a question I always get, and what you think we can do as a university to advance the vision of where the college would like to go. Just a couple of quick comments. This is a very impressive unit to me. I think of the College of Science as being a kind of a startup. It's been around for a while, but not that long in the history of the university. There are pieces of it that go way back, but it's really got a sense, in my view, of an experiment, of a dynamic group of faculty, staff, and students who have great aspirations. A lot of the work we did in the visioning process across the university called Beyond Boundaries, which is now morphed into a strategic planning process on top of that vision. But a lot of the inspiration came from things that we saw happening here. The Academy of Integrated Sciences was one of them. Now we see the School of Neuroscience, we see CDMA, reflecting some of the types of principles and ideas that came out of the Beyond Boundaries vision that we see in destination areas, strategic growth areas. But that, you've already started to poke around and understand those tensions between the vertical disciplines, the depth in our disciplines, and the ability to work across them. So I'd like to congratulate the college on taking those steps in advance of being asked to, certainly, and seeing the tremendous advantages in reshaping the college and the university to be fitting of where our students and our talent wants to go. And so I think you're in a good spot. The big challenges that I see are financial and bureaucratic. I mean, those are two themes that always come up. And I'm sure that some of the conversation will go that way. But I just wanted to reflect my deep admiration. I know Cyril shares this for the creative work that you do, the passion that you have for science. This is an era where science is being challenged, and I'm not talking about here, but just across the country, there's a different attitude about science that is scary. And you're in a position, whether you like it or not, to be a strong proponent for scientific thought, for reasoning, for the scientific basis for what we do going forward in this country and across the world. So I think the role of the college will become even more prominent, not only in the university, but in the discourse with the public. I'll leave it at that for my comments. I'd love to go and tell you all the little things I've learned about each program, but but we'll save that for questions that are relevant to that. And I'd like to also use this chance to thank Cyril for his 6 months in this role and how fast he's come up to speed. Now, he was a dean in one of our colleges, so he wasn't out of the loop, but I've been very impressed with watching him take on this tremendous responsibility of the academic enterprise, and I'd like to thank him for all the work that he's done and will do. And to Dean Morton, it's been a breath of fresh air, I'm not just talking about the College of Science, but just for the university to have her energy and passion in the room. She's a great advocate for the college, but also understands where the university's headed and is positioning, I think, the college to resonate, I think is a term that Cyril used, with the direction that the university is going and vice versa. There's a lot of energy and mass being exchanged and ideas that I think work in a symbiotic way between the college and its aspirations and the university as well. So let me turn it over to questions and our responses. We'll bring in Cyril as needed. I don't think you're mic'd up, are you? Or you have access to a microphone. And Teresa's in the room. I just saw her walked in. So where are you, Teresa? So if research innovation, we've got Teresa can step up if you have a question relevant to that. As far as handling questions coming from Roanoke and National Capital Region, I imagine we'll figure out a way to do that. But very good. Well, it's up to you. Where do you want to take this conversation? I know there's a lot on your mind, so someone's got to break through. Yes. Oh, but when you ask a question, please introduce yourself and say what part of the college you're associated with.
So my name is Charlotte Parks. I do recruiting for the undergraduate side of the College of Science. I am also a member of the Diversity Committee, and I was very excited to hear your Project 2022 plans and things like that. And my question is, now that we're kind of a year into that plan, do you think that we're going to be able to meet that goal?
Yeah, we set, actually we're 2 years into Project 2022, which is a kind of a shorthand for a commitment we made a couple of years ago to essentially double the underrepresented minority and underrepresented, underserved, first generation, low income student population in the incoming class by 2022. So that's a ambitious thing to throw out there, but my view is unless you put a really high goal, people don't stretch. And this college is stretching. I can see it. I've seen the work that you're doing both on the hiring of faculty, but also in recruiting students. So congratulations on that progress that you're making. Why is that important? Well, I think we are a little bit behind the curve. There are three principles that I look at. One is, are we prepared for the talent pool that is out there now and will be out there in the future? Are we really accessing the full talent pool? And the answer is no, and I can say that across the board. It's not the College of Science, but we have not been in that position. We've been living fine with what we've been doing, where we've been recruiting, what kinds of work we've been doing, but it won't work going forward. It's clear that the demographics are shifting rapidly, and we also need the second point is we need an environment, not just for our students, but for our faculty as well, that brings in different lived experiences that allow us to compete for these projects and to develop research programs and curricula that will really meet the needs of the U.S. and globally as well in the coming decades. And yes, we do a little of that. No, we're not there yet. And there's a bit of a way to go. If you talk to our employers right now, they're constantly on us about, we love Virginia Tech students, but they're not, their life experiences are so narrowly compartmentalized that they don't represent the kinds of talent that we need to recruit. You know, they love the ones they do recruit, but they constantly challenge us. You need to bring in students who've lived in other parts of the country, who've grown up in different conditions, maybe low income or underrepresented minority, or students who have different outlooks on life, have different perspectives politically, whatever it may be. Our employers are hungry for that, and they're asking us to step up. And creating an environment where we can put PROSM at the forefront and ask those questions about who are we trying to serve, what is the human condition we're trying to address. Well, they all require an environment that is diverse in all senses of that word. I don't just mean race and ethnicity, I mean across the board. You've got to be able to get into a room with a group of faculty or students and have conversations that are challenging, that, that bring in perspectives that come from different directions. And are we there yet? No, we're making progress. The third is the equity part, which is much deeper and much more complex to talk about. But there is an equity role in this as well. I mean, we have a history associated with this institution and with the country that stays with us. We can't just say, oh, that's in the past, we're looking forward. There is a requirement, I think, that we look at how we got to where we are and how do we get to a new place. And those three elements are what make this, I think, an imperative for the university to be addressing. I might be here for 10 years. I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I hope it's at least 10 years. But when I think about that, if I think about the next 10 years, there's a lot we could drop and just say, we don't need to worry about it, we'll be fine. And the reality is probably that we would be. But I'm looking out 20, 30 years, and that's where I'm scared by where we are. But I think to get to your question more directly, in every metric we have been making progress. Are we making enough progress to stay on that particular curve that Project 2022 has given us a milestone to meet? No, we're not. We're behind that curve, but we're turning it up. And where I see the big changes are in faculty recruiting. I think that part is really starting to shine. There's a lot of effort now going into looking at more diverse pools, broader pools of talent than we have in the past, and the College of Science has been leading in that, really. The student part is much more complex because there's a financial piece to it, a big financial piece. And if you look at some of what our donors have done recently, stepping up with two historic gifts, the Calhoun Scholars and the Clark Scholars, as examples of the donors coming up and saying, here's 15 million in one case, 15 to scholarships in the other one, to endow either a full ride or a partial scholarship to allow students who wouldn't have accessed Virginia Tech in the past because they just thought it was inaccessible to really have a route forward. We hosted the inaugural 10 Clark Scholars at the Grove night before last. These are freshmen, there are 10 of them, and they're full of energy. Almost all of them said they wouldn't have come to Virginia Tech without that scholarship. They couldn't have figured it out. And you'd be amazed by the talent in that group and the aspirations and the struggles they had to overcome. They're just set up for success. And their employers, their partners in the future are anxious for them to finish and get out there and into the workplace and into the organizations that they'll inhabit. So I think we've made a great start, but it's going to take some real dedicated effort to stay on that path. And do I think we're going to get there to the goals of Project 2022? Well, those are just milestones. I think we're going to be challenged to get there, but I'm okay with the fact that we may come up a little short, but we're going to bend that curve. I have no doubt.
Other questions?
Real quick, we want to do this for the people on the live stream, so you may ask a question, but just want to let you do it here.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Sorry, I forgot that. Thank you, Danielle.
Daniela Cimini, professor in biological sciences. Is this on?
Yeah.
So I actually want to touch on the faculty recruiting in terms of diversity. You mentioned that, but I think we still find a lot of obstacles. I think that's important because these students coming in need role models. But we find obstacles still, and one of them is space. And so what can the university do to help us in that sense, and what can we do to help the university?
Yeah, in our first hour, we met with the leadership of the College of Science, and that was probably the primary topic, was space, and startups was another topic. Those are the two that kind of resonated. Resources, essentially. And we had that discussion going. Your dean has been a great advocate for you with the work that she does with Cyril and with our budget office. And we're going through the critical needs process right now. There's never enough money. That's the bottom line. But this question about whether there's enough space is a more complicated one. We've talked a lot about how do we utilize our space better? Do we as an institution take control? I don't mean control in an oppressive way, but do we actually know what space we've got and how it's being used, and could we use it better? There are some, I think, big opportunities coming up with respect to space on the Blacksburg campus, but they all take time. The first priority in our capital projects with the state is the new laboratory science building. And that's the one that will be a partner to the new classroom building. We've got to come up with better names. That's I don't know who that donor knew was, but he or she is very generous to us across the campus. But we had planning money last year from the state for that project. Typically, planning money is followed by construction money. They rarely give you planning money and then say, oh, there's no construction money. So next year we go and ask for the construction money for that. And I feel good about that project. That's the first of the big projects that is going to, I think, happen. I feel good about that. But there are other, we talked about renovating the space that we've got and some of the work that we're in planning stages that will help with that. We had some good comments from department heads about how they prioritize renovation of space when they recruit faculty, because it's such a dire need in some corners of the institution. And this college has, I think, I don't know the stats on this, but just from walking around, I would say that you have more than your fair share of buildings that are in need of major overhauls. So I'm sure we have those numbers and all that figured out, but you have them. So this is a priority, and it's going to take time, but we'll get there. It's going to take some creative thinking too, because we have used the CRC, for example, as overflow. It's not ideal, but for example, the computer science department's out there. We've got various units that are using CRC space. There are different ways to utilize space on the Blacksburg campus than we use right now. So we're looking at all of that. Recognize it's a limitation. One thing I would say about growth is that, just to give you a little perspective, I know last year panicked people who teach first-year students because we had 500 or 600 more students than we had planned on. We went well over capacity. This year we're doing our best to come in at the 6,200 mark, which is what we wanted to come in last year at, about 6,200, 6,300, and we ended up at 6,800 something. So that the stress that the campus felt last year will not be repeated this year. It'll be a more manageable number. Where we are right now, just to dispel the rumors that I hear in town that we're going to become Ohio State, we're at 27,000 undergraduates. Our upside ceiling in 2022 is 30,000. So it's about 10% over the next 4 years, which is just slightly greater than our no growth rate. So, you know, we're not going to Ohio State. That is not where we're headed. I personally think Blacksburg can probably handle 30,000 undergrads, but no more. There's not, unless this town really flips and decides to look at itself differently, our growth is going to be in Roanoke and the National Capital Region primarily. Yes, could you use the mic, please?
Yeah,
so we can...
Thank you.
Hi, Webster Santos from Chemistry.
Good to see you
How
again.
does the university think about faculty entrepreneurship, and if there are going to be programs that help faculty take their findings in laboratories into the clinic, for example?
Yeah, we're working on that now. I don't know if Teresa wants to add anything, but I'll just give you a quick update, and she can correct me if I stray too far. But our research and innovation infrastructure is badly in need of major overhaul. And our research enterprise outgrew our growth over the last 15 years, outstripped our capacity to support that growth. I mean, I can say that across the board, uniformly comfortable with that statement in every sector of that, from everything from translation, commercialization, back to just basic support of space for faculty who do research. But parts of it are being overhauled step by step. The part that is, I think, in really good shape is our Business Engagement Center. So if you haven't interacted with that, Brandy Salmon is the director of that. It is doing great work in terms of rebuilding relationships with industry primarily. And I feel like that's on a great track. The compliance part is a current focus. Our compliance infrastructure is not what it needs to be for a major research institution. We've got issues across the board. I think some of them that have become urgent have been addressed and already. The IRB is one that has presented significant challenges this year, and I think we're in a good spot to do basically a Band-Aid fix followed by a permanent fix, and I feel good about that. Teresa, is that an accurate way to put it? The area of technology commercialization and translation is also going through a major overhaul because it was set up in the post-Bayh-Dole era as a revenue center that supported itself, and that model doesn't actually work now. And many of our peer institutions have flipped that model and said it's a cost center, we got to invest in it, and the outcome is not license revenue, it's relationships with companies, it's the ability for our faculty to start companies, it's about the broader impacts that we achieve that aren't as measured and don't have that tight loop of revenue flowing back to support the patent costs and the other costs associated with a technology office. So we're in the process of rethinking that whole mechanism and putting it into a better spot. It's going to take some time. I mean, Teresa was just pointing out the other day that for this coming year, we have $100,000 for patent costs across the university. It's not off by an order of magnitude. It's off by something else. But we're working on that problem as well. Again, no easy fixes, but I think we have an orientation that is going in a good direction. In terms of the research and innovation ecosystem, if you will, that term that's used a lot, we've identified the various parts of that and are starting to work on them. You can go back from the sort of the VC end of it, or do we have access to venture capital? And we never have enough, but Virginia Tech and Corellium went in together to start a $15 million fund. That's a small amount for this kind of thing, but it gets us started. Then we go back and have the sort of the early stage or seed stage, and there's a proof of concept stage, and there's a patent cost stage. And all those we're working on trying to identify what do we need to fill that gap in the short term, and in the long term, how do we make that sustainable? And other institutions, our peer institutions are ahead of us. We used to be a top 100 institution in terms of commercialization and patenting, licensing, and we dropped out of that. And we've got to get back on track because the ideas that are being generated should put us in that top tier. The feedstocks here, you can always have more, but we need to take advantage of those ideas and move them forward. So I feel like the energy's there, the commitment's there. It's all about finding the money and making it happen. And I wish we could do it, just snap our fingers and have it done. But what we're doing as an institution is taking one segment, revamping it, doing to the next one, revamping it. And so it'll be a multi-year process, but we'll get there. The kind of work that you do and many of your colleagues here informs us as to where we have gaps. So one thing that I would encourage, and I think Teresa gets her earful of this, but where you see gaps, let us know, because don't assume that we know what they are. I think we probably do in a broad sense, but because we hear a lot of feedback, but do let us know. And I know that, I don't know if you two have talked, but I know that we had a conversation the other day about specific issues associated with intellectual property, and those are things we need to address. The students actually, we have a lot of students who are interested in this process. The Apex Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, we've got a IP group of students, IP club that is really engaging. So it's not just the faculty, the students are really wanting to be part of this as well.
Okay. Mark?
Hello, I'm Mark Embry from the math department. We've had a great opportunity this year to hire across the destination areas across the campus, and I think we're had a few faculty come in this past year, but really now is the big influx of destination area hires. Really at a critical moment, these faculty will show up in a few months, and they'll develop a pattern of behavior if they're going to embed in a department and continue as normal faculty with the mild allegiance to the destination areas, or if they really plug in and realize that interdisciplinary vision. just curious if you have thoughts for how we can better realize that destination area concept in terms of bringing these faculty in and beginning to form the kind of interdisciplinary collaborations that you all had in mind when we developed this vision.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. We've talked about that quite a bit, and I'm going to leave the mic open for Cyril on this. I'll make a few comments based on my experience. I've never been involved in something as ambitious as destination areas, but in the interdisciplinary cluster hiring work that I've been involved in the past, there are a couple of things besides getting the faculty in the door. You've got to have create a space for them, literally and figuratively, to form collaborations, to be part of a group. And so that may involve a building or plans for a building, and in some cases we have that underway in some of the destination areas. In other cases it might be just attention by the destination area faculty to making sure that there is a cohort feeling amongst the faculty coming in, and they're connected to disciplinary faculty as well, but that there's a regular way that they get together and exchange information and try to create a vibrant system. I mean, if everybody relaxes back, and that's probably the wrong way to think of it, but if everybody drops back into a faculty role within the discipline, that's not a horrible thing, because they then connect when the time comes, and they have those opportunities. But it would be a shame to miss the opportunity when they come in the door to create a vibrant community right off the bat. And some of that can be done without a lot of money, but it needs to be a focus of our destination areas. So Cyril, would you elaborate, if you wish?
Yeah, sure. So this is really an important element, and in fact, it's been a topic of conversation ongoing, but especially over the last 2 weeks. President Sands and I, in fact, met with the destination strategic growth areas. Was it yesterday morning?
Yeah, something like that. Mm-hmm.
And that was a follow-up meeting because I had the opportunity to visit with them about a month ago. And so I want you to be aware that the destination areas, the program managers, the leading faculty and stakeholder groups are actually quite active in terms of convening faculty, both current and new, in terms of advancing the vision and advancing the sort of core of activities around the destination areas. So we do have something to build on, and we'll continue to work on that to be sure that we create, that we convene, that we establish an opportunity for these communities of scholars, researchers, and educators to continue to work together. Ultimately, that's not going to be sustained unless we continue to support the projects that they work on. So whether it be a transdisciplinary series of courses, and there are a number of those where we're really accomplishing a lot of positive outcomes here, but also in terms of those problem sets that are really good subjects for research going forward. And those are already starting to emerge within some of the destination areas, and we'll continue to do that. What I do want to take this opportunity not only to recognize the importance of this particular matter, but also to encourage colleges, but particularly departments, to move forward in terms of really facilitating and accommodating this new kind of research and educational mission at the academic level. And what I'm talking about here is specifically the expectations that arise out of the particular assignments of faculty, what the expectations are around the annual goals that are evaluated in the annual evaluation process, and these culminate ultimately in the process around promotion and tenure. And so departments were asked some time ago to do some work in terms of really explicitly stating what the reasonable expectations are within the context of the particular discipline, and to identify some expectations or benchmarks around that. And I'll be coming back to colleges and asking deans to partner with me in encouraging departments to continue to do that. And there's some important conversations that need to happen here around, for example, how do you credit scholarship in a transdisciplinary context? What does it mean in this sort of new realm to be first author or senior author or whatever your particular discipline expects? How are you going to think about commitment of instructional time that happens not just within the department, but is in a cluster of courses that actually occur between or outside a particular department. These are important matters because unless faculty have that infrastructure established in a policy, expectation, and procedure base, that is going to undercut a lot of the things that we try to accomplish in really creating these communities of learners and researchers. So this is, it's not terribly complicated, but it is important that we collectively sit down and chart a course that really will accommodate what is an ongoing transformation of the university.
Thank you. We might have time for one more question, if there is one. Is there one coming from the live stream, Stephen?
We had a question by email, but that's already been covered. It was on financial support and workspace.
Okay. Any other final questions? I think if you wanted to end and
Oh,
convene
I'm being
to the-
invited
oh,
to
yes,
end? All right. Well, I just thought there was a hand was going to come up, but no need. We will get together and have more informal conversations. Where are we getting together?
We're just
Right
outside,
outside
here
Okay,
in the
good.
Assembly
Good.
Hall.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I realize it was kind of short in terms of the time, and you probably have questions you'd like to, or conversations, points you'd like to make. You can catch us in the hallway, but we're always available. Don't hesitate to reach out. And of course, Dean Morton is also available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Thank you.
Thank you.